The clock above the emergency doors didn't move. Or maybe I just couldn't see straight through the fog of tears. A nurse finally came out, slowly pulling off her gloves. She didn't have to say anything. I knew. He was gone. Ethan. My husband. My best friend. One minute he was on his way home from work, the next his heart just gave out behind the wheel. A silent attack. Quick. Cruel. They told me he didn't even feel pain. But I did. I sat alone in a cold hallway chair, shaking, clutching the strap of my purse like it was the only thing keeping me upright. My hands dialed automatically. I needed someone. Anyone. I called my mom. Mom, it's Ethan. I choked out. He's gone. He's gone. Can you please come? I can't do this alone. There was a clatter of dishes in the background. Laughter. Music. Then her voice. Oh, honey, we're at your sister's birthday dinner right now. Can it wait until tomorrow? Everyone's here, and we just brought out the cake. I didn't respond. Couldn't. She said, try to get some sleep, all right? We'll check in soon. She hung up. They never showed. Not that night. Not the next morning. Not even at the funeral home. I signed papers. Chose the casket. Explained death to our 8-year-old daughter, Claire. All on my own. 3 days later, they came. No hugs. No flowers. Just polite nods and pitiful faces. Then Mom sat on the couch and said, so, did he leave you everything? I mean, legally speaking, inheritance can get tricky. Especially with family involved. Dad added, you know we helped with that down payment back then. It's only fair we get our share now that things are being sorted. Claire was standing by the doorway, silent as a ghost. She disappeared for a moment, then came back holding a white envelope with shaky hands. Here, she said, stepping toward them. That's why you came, right? They froze. Mom took the envelope slowly, her fingers trembling. Inside was a letter. One I had prepared. One that explained everything they needed to know about the will, the trust, the reality of what Ethan left behind. But Claire didn't wait for their reaction. She walked back toward me, took my hand, and said, can we go home now? My name is Anna Graves. And from wherever you're watching this video, stay with me. Because losing the love of your life is a kind of death. But being forgotten by your own family? That's the part that doesn't stop hurting. I used to believe that if I did everything right, they'd see me. That if I got the good grades, stayed quiet, didn't cause problems, they'd finally look at me the way they looked at her. My sister, Lily. The golden girl. The one who got the new dresses, the extra dessert, the louder cheers at graduation. Even when she barely passed. She had a laugh that made people turn their heads. I had a quiet voice they forgot in the car. When I met Ethan in college, I finally felt seen, not just looked at, but seen. He wasn't flashy. Not a six-figure guy or some brilliant entrepreneur. He worked as a paramedic. Came home smelling like hospitals and kindness. He listened when I spoke. He held space when I cried. But to my parents, he was a waste of potential. He's just average, Anna. Don't you want something more? I mean, what can a man like that really give you? They refused to come to our wedding. Said it was too sudden. We eloped anyway, in a small garden, just the two of us and Claire growing in my belly. He kissed my forehead and promised me that no matter who showed up, he would never leave my side. A month later, my parents threw Lily a massive engagement party, complete with ice sculptures, monogrammed napkins, and a fireworks display. They posted it all on Facebook. Never once messaged me to ask how married life was going. When Claire was born, I sent them photos. Weeks passed, no reply. Eventually, they came to visit. My mom held Claire like she was made of glass, smiled politely, and said, she's sweet. Looks more like Ethan than you, though. They never called on birthdays. Never asked what she liked. When Lily's twins were born, my parents had a nursery built in their home. Claire noticed, of course. Kids always do. Why don't Grandma and Grandpa want to play with me? She once asked. I told her, they're just busy, baby. But I knew the truth. We didn't fit their picture. We weren't loud or polished or impressive. We were just quietly happy. And in my family, that wasn't enough. So Ethan and I built something without them. Sunday pancakes, backyard sprinklers, grocery store dance parties. We didn't have much, but it was full of love. Real love. And when he died, the only arms that held me were Claire's. Not my mother's. Not my father's. They were too busy icing a cake and clapping for Lily to hear my heart break. When they finally showed up, it wasn't for me. It wasn't for Claire. It was for what they thought they deserved. Even after death, I still came second. Grief doesn't move in a straight line. It stumbles. Stops. Swallows you whole. For the first week after Ethan died, I moved like a shadow. I planned the funeral alone, choosing the casket, the flowers, the song he once said he wanted played, if anything ever happened. Claire watched me carefully. She didn't cry much at first, just followed me from room to room, holding my hand like she was the one keeping me upright. My parents didn't send flowers, didn't offer to help. Lily posted a black and white selfie with a caption, "R.I.P. to my sister's husband. Life is short. Love your people, broken heart." She spelled his name wrong. The day of the funeral, my parents arrived 10 minutes late. They sat in the back, left immediately after. Didn't say a word to Claire. That night, the silence in our house felt different. Not just empty, but vacant. I was pouring tea 2 days later when my mom called. Her voice was soft, gentle even. "Hi, sweetie. How are you holding up?" I almost cried hearing that tone from her. Almost. Until she added, "We were wondering if maybe we could stop by. Just to talk." They came the next morning, dressed like they were meeting a banker. My dad even wore a tie. We sat in the living room, where Ethan's slippers still sat near the fireplace. We were just thinking, my mom started, "Ethan had a lot going on. A house, some savings, right? We know he wasn't rich, but..." She trailed off, looked at my father. Dad cleared his throat. "It's just that, technically, we are family. And with things like this, it's always good to be transparent. About what's left. About how it might be divided." My heart didn't break. It hardened. They didn't come to check on us. They didn't ask how Claire was sleeping. They didn't even say they missed him. They came for money. "I'm sorry," I said, swallowing everything I wanted to scream. "Are you asking if Ethan left you something?" Mom gave a tight smile. "Well, I mean, we helped with things over the years. The down payment, remember? And it's only fair." Claire was in the hallway, frozen, holding her sketchbook. They didn't see her, but I did. That night, she climbed into bed with me and whispered, "They were talking about Daddy's money." I nodded, gently stroking her hair. What did they mean by split fairly? I swallowed hard. Nothing that matters to us, baby. But in my heart, something shifted. They hadn't lost a son-in-law. They didn't mourn him. They didn't even really know him. They just saw his death as an open door. They came with fake sympathy, but what they really brought was a calculator. And that's when I knew. They didn't lose a person. They saw a payday. I never believed in revenge, not the loud kind. The kind that screams and breaks and burns things down. But silence? Silence is a different kind of fire. The morning after their visit, I called Ethan's lawyer, Mr. O. A quiet man with kind eyes who once said, "Ethan may not be rich in money, but he's rich in preparation." He was right. Ethan had left everything in order. A living trust. A detailed will. Claire's college fund. Life insurance. Emergency documents. He'd protected us. Even in death. Mr. Rowe met me in his office with a folder already labeled, "Anna Graves and Claire, personal and confidential." We went through everything, page by page. Ethan had left every cent to Claire, with me as the sole trustee. Nothing to my parents. Nothing to Lily. No loopholes. No drama. And now, I was making sure it stayed that way. "I want to add an addendum," I said. "A clause that states that no one, not even blood relatives, can contest any part of this estate." He nodded. "It's your right. And it's smart." I added more. Updated beneficiaries. Closed every financial window they might crawl through. Then I went home and started building my file. I created a folder. A real one, physical, thick and locked.
Inside.
A copy of the will. Statements from the trust. A letter addressed to whom it may concern, detailing the harassment. Screenshots of my parents' messages. And one handwritten note from Ethan I'd been saving. Whatever happens, protect Claire first. She's our legacy. I wasn't angry anymore. I was ready. That night, as I sat at the kitchen table sorting papers, Claire came into the room. She was holding her stuffed bear and rubbing her eyes. "What are you doing, Mommy?" "Just organizing things," I said softly. She looked at the papers. Then at me. "They're coming for what's not theirs, huh?" I paused. She wasn't a baby anymore. She was watching, learning. I closed the folder, walked over, and knelt in front of her. "Yes," I said, "but they'll leave with what they deserve." She nodded once, like she understood more than an 8-year-old should. I pulled her close, kissed her forehead, and whispered, "And you, my love, you'll get everything your daddy wanted for you." They rang the doorbell, like guests, like people with a right to knock. My parents stood outside with a Tupperware container of lemon cake and the kind of smiles people wear at church funerals.
Polished.
Practiced. Empty. "Hi, sweetie," my mom said. "We just wanted to check in. See how you're coping." I let them in, not out of kindness, but because I wanted them to see what they'd never really looked at. The home Ethan built with his hands. The framed crayon drawings Claire made for Father's Day. The pictures on the mantel, of laughter, not luxury. They sat stiffly in the living room, commenting on the new rug, the scented candles. Then Dad cleared his throat. "I know this is a difficult time," he began. "And we want to be respectful, but we also want to make sure things are handled fairly. Ethan was part of our family, too." Mom nodded quickly. "And I just can't help but wonder what he would have wanted. Surely he'd want to honor all the people in his life." That was when Claire entered the room. Quiet.
Calm.
Holding a sealed white envelope with both hands. She walked straight to them. "This is for you," she said. "That's why you came, right?" They blinked, stunned. Mom took the envelope with shaking fingers. Opened it slowly. Inside, a certified copy of Ethan's will, stamped and signed. Every asset legally bound to me and Claire. A trust document with Claire's name etched in bold, undeniable letters. And one photo. It was a picture of me at 5 years old, sitting on my childhood bed, arms crossed, tears in my eyes. My mother sitting beside me, looking at her phone. Attached was a small sticky note. "This is the last time you ever held me. Don't pretend to care now." The air left the room. Mom's lips parted, but no sound came out. Dad looked pale, like he'd seen a ghost. Claire stood tall, voice steady. Daddy left everything to the people who truly loved him. That's what he wanted. They didn't argue.
Couldn't.
The truth had come wrapped not in fire, but in paper. Unshakable, legal, cold, and most of all, earned. They placed the envelope back on the coffee table and stood. I didn't walk them to the door. Claire didn't say goodbye. The only sound as they left was the slow creak of the floorboards. Like the house itself had waited years for them to leave. The storm came the next morning. Not rain, not thunder, just a barrage of angry texts and voicemails. My mom's voice, high-pitched and furious. "How dare you humiliate us like that, after everything we've done for you?" Dad's message, cold and clipped. "You think this is over? Just wait until the family hears what kind of daughter you are." They'd finally read every page of the documents Claire handed them, and they didn't find loopholes. They found locks, airtight, ironclad, untouchable. So they did what manipulators do when control slips. They performed. Lily called next, sighed dramatically, and said, "Look, I'm not trying to pick sides, but they are our parents. They raised us, fed us. Maybe just give them something? Anything?" I didn't yell. I didn't defend. I asked one question. "Do you remember your wedding?"
She paused.
"Of course." "Do you remember the $30,000 they spent on the venue? The designer dress? The private chef?" "Yeah." "And the down payment on your first home?" Silence. "I paid for my own wedding," I said. They didn't even show up. Ethan and I slept in a borrowed motel room that night. No gifts. No calls. More silence. They raised you. They tolerated me. That was the last time Lily called. But the story didn't stay quiet. Our cousin Leah, blunt, unfiltered, texted me after seeing the scene unfold in our extended family group chat. Your mom's trying to say you stole from the family. But I saw the documents. Claire's name is on everything. Ethan protected you. I respect that. Others reached out, slowly.
Carefully.
Some offering support. Some apologizing for never seeing the favoritism. They'd always thought I was just distant. Now they understood I was surviving. Mom and Dad tried to spin it. Anna turned cold after Ethan died. She's poisoning the child against us. She's unstable with grief. But their story unraveled just like their grip. Every move they made now reeked of desperation. They showed up at family events and were met with polite nods, not warm hugs. They told their version of things. And no one clapped. Because I never fought back. I never raised my voice. I never dragged them through the mud. I didn't have to. The truth was louder than anything they had left. And in the silence they used to ignore me with, they now sat.
Alone.
Isolated. Humiliated. Not because I destroyed them, but because they finally had to live in the world they built without me. We moved in early spring. The new house wasn't big. Just 2 bedrooms, a small garden, and a porch that creaked when Claire jumped too hard on it, which she did often. But it was ours. No ghosts. No shadows. No obligations. We painted Claire's room light blue. She taped her drawings to the wall. In the evenings, she'd sit by the window and read, the way Ethan used to. Sometimes I caught her whispering to the sky, like she was telling him about her day. She started thriving at school, winning art contests, raising her hand in class, laughing with that wide-open mouth she always used to cover. Her teacher once told me, Claire has a calm confidence I rarely see in kids. I smiled. She gets it from her dad. But I was changing too. One morning, I walked into the community center and left a sticky note on the board. Grieving isn't weakness. Come sit with someone who gets it. 5 women showed up that Friday. Then 9. Then 15. It wasn't formal, just tea, folding chairs, and honesty. We didn't compare losses. We just shared them. And slowly I stopped drowning. Late one night, I wrote out everything that had happened, from the hospital call to the envelope Claire handed over. I posted it anonymously on a women's support forum under the title, They Came for the Inheritance. My daughter gave them the truth. Within hours, it went viral. Comments flooded in, women from all over the world writing, This is my story too. You gave me courage. Your daughter's a lion, just like her mother. I didn't respond to all of them, but I read every word. And then I did something that made me cry for an entirely different reason. I opened a scholarship in Ethan's name, the Ethan Graves Foundation, for daughters who were ignored. It offered small annual grants to girls raised in toxic homes, money for books, therapy, even an escape fund. The first recipient was a teenager who left a note with her application. I never thought someone would build something for people like us. But Ethan had. He just didn't know it yet. I framed one of his old photos, the one where he's holding Claire on his shoulders, both of them laughing, faces tilted to the sun. It sits on my nightstand. That night, I picked it up, kissed the glass, and whispered, I told you I'd protect her. The auditorium was filled with clapping hands, proud families, and stage lights that made everything glow. Claire stood at the podium in her navy blazer, reading her acceptance speech with a voice so steady and sure, it gave me chills. She was 14 now, taller than me, braver than I ever was at her age. She had just received the Young Leader in Arts and Advocacy award for organizing a mural project in the city's underserved schools, each piece representing a child who felt forgotten, unheard, unseen. My daughter turned pain into paint, just like her father turned quiet into strength. As she stepped down from the stage, her eyes scanned the crowd until they landed on me. She smiled. A real, proud, healing smile. I stood and clapped with everything I had. And then, like a ghost that didn't know when to leave, my phone buzzed. Mom. The name lit up the screen, and for a second, I just stared at it. I hadn't blocked her. I didn't need to. Let her see the life she chose to walk away from. Without a second thought, I silenced the call and slid the phone into my purse. Outside, the sky was soft and golden, like it knew what the moment meant. Claire walked beside me, holding her little glass award. Mom, she asked gently, do you ever miss them? I didn't answer right away. I wanted to be careful with the truth. Finally, I said, I miss the parents I wished I had, but I don't miss who they really were. She nodded. No sadness, just understanding. We stopped at the top of a small hill behind the venue. From there, we could see the mural she helped paint, bright, brave colors wrapping around an otherwise gray building. There were no portraits of villains. Just strength, just memory, just forward motion. Claire turned toward me. Did Daddy ever think we'd end up okay? I smiled through the lump in my throat. He knew we would. He made sure of it. She leaned into me, and together we walked toward the parking lot, the light stretching long and warm behind us. And as our footsteps faded into the glow of the evening, I thought of everything we'd lost and everything we'd built from that loss. The noise faded, the drama died, and what remained was ours. Because some people come for the inheritance, but love, that's never for sale.
The wine glass was already filled when I sat down. My father stood at the head of the table, holding his drink high, his face carved into that unsettling smile he always wore when something didn't quite add up. The table was filled. My mother, my younger brother Jason, his girlfriend, and a couple of extended relatives I barely knew anymore. The whole thing was thrown together last minute, allegedly to celebrate my big exit. I'd just sold my startup, a cybersecurity firm, for just over $11 million. And suddenly they remembered my name. My father cleared his throat. To my millionaire son, he said. His voice echoed in the vaulted dining room. May your success bring you closer to those who love you. Everyone laughed politely. My mother dabbed her eyes with a napkin. Jason gave me a thumbs up like he was part of the victory. I nodded, lifted my glass, and then, casually, reached for the wrong one. Or rather his. He wasn't paying attention. No one was. I clinked glasses with him, the switch already complete, and took a long sip.
He mirrored me.
I smiled. The evening dragged on with toasts, fake affection, and shallow conversations. I'd spent the past 6 years grinding nonstop while my family watched from a distance, asking for money every few months like it was owed to them. But tonight, they were full of warmth. Too full. My father, especially, couldn't stop smiling. That same smile, tight, smug, cold behind the eyes. Then came the first sign. He blinked hard, rubbed his forehead, tried to steady his breathing. Everything okay, Dad? Jason asked. He waved it off. Just a little hot in here, isn't it? 2 minutes later, he stood up suddenly, knocking over his chair. His glass shattered. My mother screamed. He hit the ground hard, his limbs convulsing. Forks clattered. My aunt covered her mouth. Jason jumped up, yelling for someone to call 911. I just sat there, watching. They crowded around him, chaos spilling across the room like broken wine. I looked down at the glass I drank from. Still full. Still clean. My name is Ethan Blake. And from wherever you're watching this, stay with me. Because when your own father tries to poison you, you stop calling it family. This wasn't paranoia. It wasn't drama. I know exactly what was in that glass. See, when you grow up with people who treat love like a loan, you learn to pay attention. When you become the only person in the family with real money, real freedom, you become a target. That night, something shifted. Not in them, they've always been who they are. It shifted in me. I stopped pretending this was loyalty, or love, or blood. They toasted to my life, hoping I wouldn't finish the night. But I did. And when the EMTs carried my father out of the house, unconscious, I raised my own glass quietly. A toast. Not to him. To the beginning of the end. Because the glass was clean. But the truth? Run. Success, when you come from nothing, is supposed to feel like freedom. But for me, it felt like a collar. I didn't come from legacy. I didn't have a trust fund or an uncle in venture capital. What I had were 18-hour days, 3 years in a one-bedroom apartment with no heat, and a laptop that froze every 5 minutes. That's how I built Cibitrix, a cybersecurity tool I started coding in coffee shops while my friends were out drinking or dating. It took 4 years before anyone noticed it. 2 more before it sold. When the acquisition finally happened, my name hit the trades. My inbox blew up. My phone didn't stop ringing. But the first people at my door? Family. My father, who once told me I should get a real job and stop playing hacker, suddenly called me his genius son. My mother cried when I handed her a check to pay off the second mortgage. Jason asked for a car. Just a used one, nothing crazy. I bought them a house in Westlake. Nothing extravagant. Just safe, quiet, stable. A thank you, I told myself. But the thank you became a transaction. The shift was quiet at first. Can you cover this month's HOA fees? Your mom's back is acting up. Think you could handle her chiropractor visits? Your brother's between jobs again. Just for now. I justified all of it. I wanted to be the good son. I'd missed birthdays, holidays, and hospital visits building my business. Maybe this was how I made it up to them. But the gratitude never lasted longer than the deposit cleared. Eventually, they stopped asking and started expecting. Every conversation ended with a price tag. Every visit was a subtle negotiation. Even my success became a punchline. My father once told someone at a barbecue, "Yeah, he's the rich one. We just work for him now." He laughed like it was a joke. It wasn't. The worst part? They made me feel guilty for resenting it. They'd say things like, "We're proud of you even if you don't visit much. You're lucky you can afford to help. Not everyone has your talents, Ethan." What they meant was, not everyone has your wallet. The deeper my bank account grew, the shallower our connection got. It wasn't love anymore.
It was balance sheets.
Credit transfers. Favor tallies. I wasn't their son. I was their ATM. One night, I overheard my father on the phone, pacing the hallway while I sat in the guest room with the door cracked open. He said, "If we keep him happy, he'll keep the money flowing. Just don't spook him." Spook me? Like I was a donor. Or worse to Mark. That was the night I stopped pretending. They didn't celebrate me because I succeeded. They celebrated because I cashed out. And now, sitting across from them at that dinner, I realized something else. They didn't want a son. They wanted an exit plan. There's a moment, right before something breaks, where everything feels too perfect, like a calm surface hiding a whirlpool underneath. That dinner? It was too perfect. Tables set with the good plates. Candles burning low. My father already sipping wine when I walked in, which was unusual because he never drank before the food was served. He always claimed it was a waste of a good vintage. But that night, 3 glasses already poured. Mine was waiting. He looked up at me with a smile I'd seen before, not warm, not proud, calculated. "Sit, son," he said. "Tonight's special." The days leading up to that dinner had been off. First, there was the call from my mother asking if I'd finalized the will yet. You know, just in case anything ever happens. Said she saw a documentary about how young millionaires die without planning. Then came the headaches, the fatigue, the strange taste in my protein shakes that I couldn't quite place. I chalked it up to stress until the dizziness hit me while driving. I had to pull over and sit in a gas station lot for 30 minutes before I could see straight. I went to the doctor. Nothing definitive. Just keep an eye on it. Blood pressure, maybe. Stress again. But deep down I knew. The clue came by accident. I dropped my keys behind the couch one morning. While reaching down, I spotted it, a tiny white pill, wedged in the carpet. I'm no pharmacist, but I have a friend who is. I sent her a picture. "That's a benzodiazepine," she texted back. "Strong sedative. Who's taking that?" No one in the house was supposed to be on anything like that. At least, not officially. I didn't say a word. Just kept smiling, nodding, and planning. By the time the dinner invitation came through, My instincts weren't whispering anymore. They were screaming. And then the glass. Poured ahead of time. No one else's was fresh. Just mine. My father raised it, his eyes locked on mine. "To my millionaire son," he said. He never said things like that. He was the kind of man who'd call you soft for celebrating birthdays. Suddenly, he's making toasts. That smile again. Like he already knew something I didn't. I felt my throat tighten. So I smiled back. And while they passed around bread and dipped into casual conversation, I switched our glasses. It was simple. Easy. They weren't watching. They never watched me closely, not the way I watched them. What happened 30 minutes later? My father's hands began to tremble. His smile faded. He coughed once, then again harder. And then he collapsed face first into the mashed potatoes. Panic broke out around the table. I stayed seated. Because, deep down, I wasn't surprised. I took the wine glass with me when I left the hospital. No one noticed. They were too busy acting shocked, rallying around my father, pretending it was just a bad reaction to blood pressure meds. The same man who mocked doctors for decades suddenly had a condition they forgot to mention. I didn't argue. I didn't even flinch. I just slipped the glass into a sealed bag and left. And 2 days later, the results from the private lab came in digitalis. A naturally occurring poison. Slows the heart. Slips past most standard talk screens. If you're lucky, it just makes you sick. If you're not, it stops the heartbeat cold. I didn't scream. I didn't confront. That's what they expected. Instead, I did the one thing they feared most. I started thinking. First, I called my lawyer, told him to pull my current will and put it under legal seal. No copies, no updates, without in-person verification from me. Next, I quietly installed surveillance in my home. Not the cheap kind. Encrypted, off-grid. Motion-detected voice triggers. I even wired the lockbox in my office with a hidden mic. Then I booked a session with a financial advisor, not to move my money, but to trace it. Every wire. Every trust. Every shared signature. Because it wasn't just the wine anymore. I wanted to know how far they'd already gone. That's when I found it. A draft copy of my will saved to my mother's shared desktop, clumsily edited. Payouts altered. Power of attorney reassigned. Even my business shares were listed under alternate beneficiaries. They weren't subtle. They were impatient. So I made one last move. I created a fake version of my will, professional, legitimate-looking, signed and notarized by an actor friend in a fake office setup I designed myself. This version? It gave everything to them. Every account. Every property. Every share. It was bait. I left it printed in my study drawer, exactly where a greedy hand might look if they thought I'd never wake up. Then I went to sleep, camera rolling, eyes closed, waiting. Because if they wanted to play games, I'd show them how I win. The night was picture perfect. My mother lit candles she hadn't touched in years. My brother wore a suit he'd never bought himself. Even my father shaved, a detail that told me more than anything else. Something was coming. They said it was a celebration dinner. For my latest acquisition. For the success they never clapped for until now. I showed up with a bottle of Chateau Margaux. Something rare. Something expensive. Something I wouldn't let them poison. My father waved it off, already lifting a full glass of red. "We already opened one," he said, smiling too wide. "To my millionaire son." He passed it toward me, the glass already poured. I paused, gave him a look that made him chuckle. "You suspicious now, boy?" I laughed. "You trying to outdo me?" And while they all looked at the TV behind us, while my mother adjusted the volume, while my brother made a joke about yachts, I switched the glasses. Clean. Quiet. No theatrics. Just sleight of hand and muscle memory from years of ignoring danger in plain sight. I raised the glass meant for him. He raised mine. And we toasted. Dinner went on. Roast lamb. Garlic mashed potatoes. 4 smiles. The occasional when are you finally settling down, thrown in like seasoning. My father took another sip. Then another. My hand didn't shake once. 29 minutes later, just as my mother brought out the pie, he dropped his fork. "Dad, my brother said. He was sweating, pale. Then came the gasp, the shaking, the sudden silence in the room as my father gripped his chest and tipped sideways in his chair. "Call 911, my mother screamed. I leapt to my feet. "What's happening? Is it his heart?" My brother cursed, fumbling with his phone. The panic was instant. So was the performance. Except I wasn't panicking. I was watching. The paramedics arrived fast. Too fast for my family to hide much. They asked questions. I gave answers. They took my father, unconscious but breathing. And as they wheeled him out, my mother looked at me with glassy eyes. "Did you?" "No," I said softly. "Did you?" At the hospital, they ran toxicology.
I didn't ask.
I already knew. When the doctor said the words digitalis poisoning, everyone gasped like it was new information. I just sat there, hands folded. My name is Ethan Blake. And 30 minutes after my father tried to poison me for my money, he drank his own plan. They thought I was the naive tech kid, the one too generous for his own good. But they forgot what made me successful wasn't code. It was pattern recognition. The hospital reeked of antiseptic and denial. Machines beeped rhythmically around my father's bed. He was awake now, weak, groggy, alive. Barely. A detective stood in the corner, arms crossed, notepad tucked tight under his arm. His eyes weren't on my father. They were on me. My mother sat beside the bed, her hands shaking. Not from grief. She hadn't cried, but from calculation. Her mind was already working overtime trying to rewrite the narrative. "Food poisoning," she muttered to no one in particular. "He's had shellfish reactions before." The doctor interrupted, holding a clipboard and a scowl. It wasn't shellfish. It was digitalis. A very specific, dangerous compound. Not found in lamb. The detective nodded. "That's consistent with the toxicology report." Someone spiked his drink. My brother flinched. My sister took a slow step away from the bed. I didn't move. I cleared my throat, and all eyes fell on me. "I know exactly what was in that glass," I said, calm as a courtroom judge. "Because I had it tested before he drank it." My mother's face dropped. My brother's jaw tightened. "You knew," he said, barely above a whisper. "I suspected." I confirmed. I reached into my coat pocket and handed the detective a second envelope, the one with my private lab's results, time-stamped and signed. He flipped it open, scanned it, then nodded. "Matches ours." My father groaned softly on the bed. Still too out of it to lie. Still too guilty to speak. "Why would we ever?" my mother began. I cut her off. "Because I stopped being your ATM. Because you started asking questions about my will. Because you're used to me bailing you out. And this time, I didn't." The detective glanced between us. "You said you switched the glasses?" "I did," I said. His plan ended up in his own bloodstream. The room cracked open with silence. Later that night, as the police launched their investigation, I made one final move. I called my lawyer, froze the accounts connected to my family, revoked access to the home, terminated the trusts, pulled back every thread they used to pull me close. My brother tried to call. I let it ring. My mother emailed me a paragraph of blame wrapped in denial. I forwarded it to my attorney. At 2:11 a.m., I stood in the hospital parking lot, phone in hand, watching the night settle over the city. I wasn't angry. I wasn't even surprised. They didn't just try to poison my body. They'd been poisoning my peace for years. And now, I was cutting off the supply. I didn't just take back my money. I took back my name. I left without fanfare. No farewell dinner. No note. Just closed doors, canceled access, and silence. Within 72 hours of the hospital incident, I had relocated. Different coast. Different phone. Different name on the mailbox. For the first time in years, I could hear myself think. In Larkhill, Oregon, a small creative city nestled between mountains and ambition, I started over. No headlines. No handshakes from people who only knew my bank account. Just people building things for the love of it. I began investing, not in startups looking to scale fast and cash out, but in people with purpose. An app developer who coded from his car. A ceramic artist trying to escape a violent household. A former foster youth launching a mental health podcast. I didn't want equity. I just wanted them to win. It was the first time money felt like freedom again. A few months later, I launched the Safe Start Foundation, a private nonprofit for kids raised in chaos. No red tape. No bureaucracy. Just direct support. Therapy, housing, mentorship, creative outlets. I never attached my name publicly. The spotlight didn't interest me anymore. But something else did. Truth. Late one night, I wrote out everything. The wine glass, the pills, the years of emotional debt, the betrayal wrapped in birthday candles. I posted it on a community blog for survivors of toxic families. No names. No revenge. Just raw, surgical honesty. I went to sleep with zero expectations. By morning, it had over 200,000 shares. People from every walk of life wrote back. This is my father. I thought I was the only one. Thank you for saying what I've been too scared to admit. Grief rippled across the screen, but something stronger rose with it. Liberation. I kept writing. They reached out, of course. My brother left voicemails, cold at first, then desperate. My mother sent a letter. Said I misunderstood everything. My father never contacted me. Cowards rarely do. I kept every message. Unread. You can love people. Forgive them, even. But you don't have to let them keep building their houses on your spine. One morning, I watched a girl from our foundation read her first poem aloud to a crowded room. Her voice shook, then steadied, then soared. And I realized they wanted me to be their ATM, their plan B, their soft place to land after breaking everything they touched. But I wasn't that. I never was. They wanted my empire. I built a kingdom without them. A year passed. I didn't count the days. I didn't mark the anniversary. But when I stepped off that stage at the TechBridge Innovation Conference back in my old city, the air tasted like closure. People clapped. Cameras flashed. Investors lined up. But all I could think about was a house that once smelled like Sunday roast and quiet resentment. I drove by my childhood street, not out of nostalgia, just confirmation. The house was empty. The grass was overgrown, paint chipped, windows dusty. A foreclosure notice flapped against the door in the wind. The family I once knew disbanded. My brother had moved states, chasing money he never earned. My sister had gone silent after her third failed startup, funded by guilt and GoFundMe pages. My mother, I'd heard, was living with an aunt, still blaming outside forces for our collapse. And my father? He sold the last of his vintage watches online to cover a lawyer's fee. No one hired him again, not after the quiet investigation that followed the toxicology report. No charges filed, but doors quietly closed. Legacy shattered. Standing across from the house, I felt no heat in my chest. No anger. No hate. Just clarity. They hadn't just underestimated me. They built an entire future around the belief that I'd never stop giving. I reached into my coat pocket and pulled out a small steel flask. Not out of habit, but ritual. I raised it in a mock toast, standing under a gray sky in front of the house where it all started. Not for them. For me. They gave me a target, I whispered. I gave myself a future. Later that evening, back at the conference gala, someone clinked their glass against mine and said, "To family." I smiled politely, but inside, I toasted something else. To peace. To boundaries. To choosing yourself without apology. Because here's the truth. I gave them everything. My time. My love. My trust. My money. They answered with manipulation, betrayal, and, eventually, a poisoned glass. But that night, I didn't just dodge a murder attempt. I buried a legacy of abuse. That night, I raised a glass. But it wasn't to family. It was to freedom.